Hey, I'm Jana, the little sister.
And I'm Jeff, her big brother. Welcome to Sibling Rivalry, a podcast about our favorite sport, baseball.
This week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, I'm waiting for the podcaster to be named later. Jana was traded to Pitch by Stitch. You can find them on Twitter at PitchXStitch.
No, I'm still here. Podcast commissioner didn't approve the trade.
Oh, all right then, let's look at the SRBB headlines.
Lute Olson, Hall of Fame basketball coach, died at the age of 85. He built the University of Arizona into a national powerhouse, guiding the Wildcats to their only national championship.
Members of the Players Alliance, which consists of more than 100 former and current Black MLB players, have decided to donate their salaries from the August 27th and 28th games, supporting efforts to combat racial inequality and aid the Black families and communities deeply affected in the wake of recent events.
MLB and MLB Players Association announced through August 27th, out of 12,276 samples collected and tested, 0 players tested positive for COVID. The testing took place over a 1-week period from August 20th to August 27th.
John Thompson Jr., former Georgetown University and USA basketball coach, passed away at the age of 78. The Washington, D.C. native became the first Black coach to win an NCAA Men's Division I championship in 1984 when his Hoyas, led by Patrick Ewing, beat the University of Houston. He also coached the last collegiate-only Olympic team in 1988. He once said, "I am not trying to be anything other than what I am, and I'm not really certain what that is."
You can find these and past week's headlines on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com. Remember to rate and subscribe wherever you listen, and tell a friend to listen to the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast.
MLB celebrated Jackie Robinson Day on August 28th, which was rescheduled from April 15th. All teams that played wore number 42 in honor of Jackie. Numerous teams wore 42 throughout the weekend in a continuing tribute to Jackie Robinson.
On a sad note, Chadwick Boseman, known for playing Jackie Robinson in the movie 42, died of colon cancer on Jackie Robinson Day, Friday the 28th of August. Widely known for his role in 42, he is probably more widely known as the Black Panther.
So the trade wins, they be ablowin, but unlike most wins, these trade wins had a cutoff time, and it was 4 p.m. Eastern on August 31st. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, depending on your team and depending on who you did or didn't get. So let's see what went down at the trade deadline.
San Diego was the big winner of the trade wins. I guess they got the furthest in their boat. They got Mike Clevenger, which was a big one.
Probably the biggest name out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they pretty much were interested in every Major League Baseball player possible. Even maybe Hall of Famers. I'm not sure. Maybe Bobby Bonilla. They were interested in everyone. Not only did they get Mike Clevenger, but they picked up a relief pitcher, Trevor Rosenthal from Kansas City, Mitch Moreland. You mentioned that last week. You must have had an insider
He just seemed like
trade.
The guy to go. And then another guy they picked up that we talked about last week, Trevor Rosenthal, they picked up for their bullpen from Kansas City. So they picked up not just Mike Clevenger. They picked up a lot of pieces that not only are pieces they can use now, but they picked up some prospects along the way.
Yeah.
2 catchers who are Major League ready, Jason Castro from the Angels, who is a veteran and can step right in. Austin Nola, who has, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't have thought that the Mariners would have given him up, but he ends up down there as well. So at least those 2 guys get a shot at the playoffs, because it looks like the Padres are going all in for the COVID-19 championship.
They definitely are. And they're also looking forward too. I mean, if you think about it, you look at everybody they got, all the trades they did, and you think, really? They're making all these moves for a 60-game season, but Mike Clevenger is under club control through 2022. Austin Nola, I'm not sure his club control, but he's going to be there for an extended time. And he was a really good pickup. Probably flies under the radar. He's 30 years old, spent quite a bit of time in the minors, but really good defensively and offensively.
He's shown a lot, regardless of his age, regardless of where he was. He's actually became a valuable piece apparently because he was tradable.
Yeah, I mean, he made the most of being in Seattle. When I watched the games that they played with the Dodgers, I was really impressed with him. Felt like he was a leader. I thought that was a good pickup for the Padres. Yeah, they got an outfielder, they got a shortstop. It was funny because I remember Austin Hedges, they traded him to Cleveland and they had no catchers at the time. So I'm like, are they not going to have a catcher? They just have a backstop? What's going on?
As far as like Austin Hedges goes, he wasn't much of a batter. He was a great defensive catcher and he handled the staff really well. I think that was his biggest asset as a catcher for that team, was being able to help the pitching staff there.
Well, and it's interesting too. I've mentioned this before about Austin Barnes and how Dodger pitchers have a lower ERA because catches. And the same thing, it will be interesting to see how the catchers come in and work with those pitchers. Will it be a big deal? Will there be some hiccups along the way? I don't know. So that will be interesting to see.
We've got two good catchers. Jason Castro is a veteran. He's only a rental for the next, 20 some odd days because he's a free agent at the end of the season. And then Nola was doing a good job. So I think that those guys, their professionalism and their experience will overcome whatever issues there are, and that'll all get worked out with the pitching staff.
Yeah. The other team, if you wanted to rank the next team that had a big day, was the Blue Jays. And early on, even before the deadline, I know I had said last week, Taijuan Walker, he's signed a year contract with Seattle. He's going to be there, but he is a Blue Jay. So I was wrong.
But you talked about him, and maybe that influenced the Blue Jays.
Probably.
Because I'm sure they're listening.
They are. We do have some listeners in Ontario.
Canada.
So in Canada, yes. Well, interestingly enough, though, I thought, oh man, really? He got traded after I said he wasn't going to get traded. But then Seattle's GM, Jerry DiPuto, was on 710 ESPN Seattle. And he said, I hope we get Taijuan Walker back because he'll be a free agent. So he's high on him and it really likes him, but he also said he's giving him a chance to be a competitor, where the Blue Jays at this point will be in the postseason.
Compared to Seattle, yeah, that's a possibility. The Blue Jays were very active, not quite as active as the Padres, but they picked up Jonathan Villar, who is a utility guy out of Miami, which signaled a lot to the experts that Miami was, going ahead and selling and blowing off the rest of the season, which I'll tell you why that's not the case in a minute. But they picked him up and he can fill in for Bo Bichette. And once Bo comes back, he's a utility guy. He can go anywhere you need him to play, including the outfield. So he's a good piece for them, especially if you're trying to make a run for the playoffs. They picked up 2 starters and 1 potential starter relief guy.
Yeah, Robbie Ray from the Diamondbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And they're hoping to put him in the rotation and get him back to how he was before. He's not having a great yeah, I was gonna say the glory days. Yeah, so they're looking for him. Of course, you look at that pitching staff, and the main piece of their pitching staff is Ryu, who signed over the winter. And now you fill in those pieces with Taijuan Walker, Robbie Ray. We'll talk about it more in depth, but the Dodgers had one trade and they traded away Ross Stripling, so he also could possibly be a starter in that rotation.
There were a few unexpected no trades. We'll talk about that in a second. To go back to the Marlins, they give up a pitcher and Jonathan BR, but they picked up Sterling Marte, who's been having a pretty decent year for the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks traded Robbie Ray to the Blue Jays and then Marte. They had a couple other trades where they got rid of guys to other teams. So the Diamondbacks were definitely sellers, but the Marlins, they were one of the top 7 teams as far as their pickup, and they really only picked up Sterling Marte.
Yeah, that was it.
Now, of the trades that didn't get made, there was one name we kept seeing, and he was one guy that a lot of teams were all lining up for. We thought maybe the Braves, because the Braves absolutely needed pitching, and they made no moves. The Dodgers were in on this guy. In fact, there was talks about when they were in Texas, Lance Lynn, who everybody thought was going to be traded, passing Ross Stripling in the hall as they traded clubhouses.
Right.
That didn't happen. That doesn't mean the Rangers didn't make moves. They just didn't get rid of Lynn, nor did they trade Joey Gallo, who was another name out of theirs. The one guy that did get traded that we didn't expect,
Mike Minor.
right, who hasn't had a great season, pitched well against the Dodgers the other day, but that was kind of a surprise. He went to the A's.
Yeah, he's made 7 starts this year. He has a 5.60 ERA, but he had a good showing against the Dodgers, kept the Dodgers scoreless for 6 innings. So I guess if you were auditioning to say, look at me, he did a good job. He's going to be a free agent after this season, but the A's picked him up. They've got some issues with some pitching, so he's a good pickup there. Now the other guy that's been around, and he just went back home, and that's Todd Frazier.
Yeah, they picked up from the Rangers. The Mets picked up Todd Frazier and Robinson Chirinos, catcher, who's always been a pretty solid veteran catcher. Who knows? The Mets they got a couple of players to be named later, and some cash in the deal for the Rangers.
And there were some interesting. You had Archie Bradley. I know we mentioned the Diamondbacks, but Archie Bradley was acquired by the Reds, been a longtime reliever in Arizona, always a very demonstrative pitcher, especially against the Dodgers, because there's always more Dodger fans in Phoenix, and that always riled him up and made him mad. So not sure what will make him mad in Cincinnati, but I'm sure he'll find something.
He can find something. I mean, they were all battling with the Cubs the other day, so he'd probably get involved in that somewhere, somehow. So Archie Bradley went there. Kevin Pillar went from the Red Sox. So the Red Sox actually made quite a few moves, but under the radar, because they sent a couple of relievers early on, like last week. In fact, we talked about it last week, to the Phillies. The Phillies improved their bullpen with a couple of those guys. They traded a couple other guys under the radar. Then they sent Mitch Moreland to San Diego, and Kevin Pillar will now play center field for the Rockies, which is a good addition for the Rockies. And they're right there on the bubble about whether they're going to compete or not. So.
Well, they also have had some issues with their bullpen, the Rockies have, and they picked up Michael Givens from the Orioles. And he's another one that just kind of flies under the radar, but they're hoping will bring some energy to their bullpen because it's been struggling.
So there was a lot of movement around. Cameron Maybin went from the Tigers to the Cubs. A bunch of other guys. A lot of these teams got around actually sending a player the opposite way, because you were only allowed to trade players in the 60-man pool this season. They got around that by doing players to be named later. So I think a lot of these where you saw that, where one team got, like the Phillies got a right-handed pitcher from the Brewers, David Phelps, for 3 players to be named later. We'll start seeing who those players to be named later were at the end of the season when everything opens back up to normal transaction.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
Pretty decent week for the Dodgers. They won more than they lost, so that's always a good thing. Of course, something happened that we didn't want to have happen, but it did. Yeah, they've now lost 10 games.
They
Were single digit. Now they're in double digit losses. I don't know. Maybe it's over.
It's it. That's it. No more.
No more.
You give up.
So the Dodgers spent some time up in the Bay, and that was an interesting series. Less so about the games, and more so about some of the things that happened that kind of had an impact on games up there. And then they went to the community center or the grill.
I like the grill.
And we'll talk about Globe Life Field in a second or two. What did the Dodgers look like to you this week?
They looked good, although they didn't start off well. That first game against San Francisco was probably one of the most frustrating games I have watched in a long time. They were ahead. Kenley Jansen comes up. He is the saver, and he did not save this game because Brandon Belt, who was 4 for 5 in this game, hit another home run and the first home run off of Kenley Jansen, sending it into innings. And there was some crazy base running. There were crazy throws. It just was a mess. And the Dodgers would get up and they would be ahead. And then situational awareness, Corey Seager throwing to first instead of throwing to third to get the runner that was on second. It was like he didn't even realize that, oh, there's a runner there, which, okay. And maybe because the Dodgers haven't been in a lot of innings, but still, he should
your
know.
Baseball knowledge should tell you,
Yes.
and you'd see him. There's a guy in a different uniform leading off of second base.
I know.
And he's right there. It's not like he was at first base and he maybe didn't catch him out of the corner of his eye.
Right. He was standing there.
Standing right next to him. And probably had a conversation with him.
Probably so. So stuff like that. And then just, it was the most frustrating game. And finally, the Giants hit a home run, won the game 10-8. And I was so glad that game was over. And then the next game was postponed because of earlier in the day, the Milwaukee Bucks had decided that they were not going to play. They really wanted to bring awareness to the social unrest going on around the country. And they felt,
especially 35 miles from their hometown.
Exactly. And so the Dodgers and the Giants decided that it would be better for them not to play either. And
to stand in solidarity.
Exactly.
For us, because I believe Mookie Betts had said at that point, I can't play.
Right.
I just can't bring myself, then I got to stand with these guys. And they decided to stand together as a team. So that's cool. Thursday was a doubleheader.
First game was Kershaw Day, and Kershaw had another great outing. He went 6 innings, no runs, 4 strikeouts, and after this game, Kershaw has the best career winning percentage in Major League Baseball history for a left-hander at .698. He's 173 for 75, and he surpassed Whitey Ford in that. So another milestone, because last week we talked about his strikeouts, and now he's got another milestone. And of course it can fluctuate, but right now he's got the best career winning percentage.
He almost had a complete game, 6 innings, because it was only, doubleheaders are only 7 innings. Gave up 4 hits, no runs. Got some support from Cody and Corey, who both went 2 for 4. AJ Pollock 1 for 3 with a walk and a home run. So, and of course, it didn't hurt them that Logan Webb, the Giants pitcher, gave up 5 earned runs that day with the 3 2/3 innings pitched.
Yeah,
So
he helped us out.
they had some issues there, but it was a good game. And once again, Clayton has been showing that feel of old Clayton. Not that Clayton's going to pitch and you feel like because you want him to do good, but in the back of your mind it may not turn out well. This season hasn't been that.
No. And game 2, Walker Buehler would have pitched, but he is currently on the IL with
Of the doubleheader.
Of the doubleheader, right? And Walker Buehler's currently on the IL with Rich Hill disease, and he has a blister. But I've heard that it's not as bad and that he's been able to throw, and it's not as extensive as Rich Hill's blisters were.
So he has mild Rich Hill's disease.
Yeah, mild. And so he was supposed to start, and Gabe Kapler, I guess, was trying to guess because he saw Dustin May throwing. So I thought, oh, well, maybe Dustin May's going to pitch. And they actually delayed the game because the Giants didn't know who was pitching. And I've never heard of this. Like, you make your lineup and it is what it is, and then you can make changes as you go. But it was a bullpen game for the Dodgers. Caleb Ferguson came in. Caleb Ferguson has looked so good this year. Total turnaround. Victor Gonzalez has been really good. He pitched a little over 2 innings that game,
2 1/3,
and just was shut out, and just really showing why the Dodgers are high on him and back in the bullpen. So the Dodgers won that game 2-0 with the bullpen. I think Blake Trinan was the winner of that game.
That was Jocelyn's game.
It was. He got both runs.
He was responsible for both runs.
Yeah, and I will say during this series, Mookie Betts also collected his 1,000th hit. So another milestone for Mookie. Although
he doesn't care.
I'm sure, right? He's like, big deal, not a big deal. Now the Dodgers, after being in the Bay, they went down south to Arlington to the Grill, and
also known as Globe Life Field, not to be confused with Globe Life Park, which is across the street, probably till they tear it down.
Yep. And Mike Minor, who we talked about in the traded to the A's, he kept the Dodgers scoreless for 6 innings. Dustin May started for the Dodgers. He went 6 innings. He had 2 earned runs. He looked good, but he needed run support, and he didn't get any run support. Jake McGee, who has looked really good, they picked him up from Colorado. He was floundering there, came to the Dodgers, has been so good, and then gave up the most runs he's given up all season, which is 4. So I think I don't think he'd given up any runs, and then he gave them all up in Texas. So that was a loss for the Dodgers. Not a good start or introduction to Globe Life.
Yeah,
Field.
Corey was the big guy that day. Went 2 for 3 with a walk and a double. Yeah, McGee gave up a home run to Derek Dietrich, their first baseman. Joey Gallo did not contribute anything.
I want to say Derek Dietrich, he looks like he should be on that TV show, Jersey Shore. Every time I see him, he has like the big chain, and he's got like frosted tips. I mean, who does that?
I guess he does.
He does. I guess. But
it's
every
funny
time
that you say that he should be there, because the other guy that plays first base and played in this series is Ronald Guzman. And when he first came up, I thought, is that Juan Gonzalez's son? Because he really resembles the old Ranger player Juan Gonzalez.
Oh, yeah. And so game 2 comes along. Dodgers face Lance Lynn. He went 6 innings, 5 hits, 4 runs, 3 earned runs, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts, gave up a home run. It was his first loss of the season.
And he still pitched better than who the Dodgers sent out there.
Exactly. That was Ross Stripling. And I guess this pretty much his performance sealed the deal for him that he was going to be traded, because he had another bad outing. He went 4 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, 2 home runs. I think he's given up 12 home runs just himself.
Well, right, because last week we talked about the 10 that he had given up. He's given up 10 or 2 more that felt like 10 more apparently, but and one of them was to Guzman. The other one was the guy who started things out on the first night, Tavares. Got a double, stole third, and then got driven home. This is how you got to play down there in Texas to get ahead, because it's just hard to hit home runs in that park.
It is, yeah. They only hit, it's like 1.5 is the average home runs that are hit.
I think they've only hit 27 on the season.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about it, they've only hit 27 in 2 months, and the Dodgers in 1 month hit 57.
57. They set a National League record for home runs in 1 month with 57. So, yeah. And in that game against Lance Lynn, Max Muncy and Cody Bellinger each homered in that game. The bullpen again came in, only allowed 1 unearned run over 5 innings. Really good showing again. But this really did seal the deal for Ross, that he wasn't going to be, because the other thing we have to remember is we still have David Price. Now, he opted out, but he'll be back next season.
Right.
And where does that leave Ross Stripling, who took his spot in the rotation? And then the other guy who has earned the spot, who pitched the next game, Tony Gonsolin.
I think Ross Stripling blew his chance because he was on the trade block. If not for Artie Moreno getting impatient about that, he would have been an Angel anyway.
Right.
And I would have been complaining about him in the Angel segment. But
I like Ross Stripling.
no, right now it looks like his career as a podcaster is probably bigger than his career as a pitcher. And he was upset. He really wanted to be a starter, and that was part of his issues. And when they brought him back, he didn't want to leave the Dodgers, but he wanted to be a starter. So he gets the opportunity. And at first it seemed like he was grasping. I mean, he was grabbing the reins, and I'm gonna ride this on, and I'm gonna ride into the sunset as a Dodger starter, a solid Dodger starter. And then somewhere along the way, he fell off. And to me, it was a big thing. The way that they traded him was they essentially said, "We don't need you.
Yeah, we don't have a place for you."
Sent him off. They got 2 players to be named later. So really, I'm sure they have an idea of what they're getting back, but they're not worried about it. They didn't get anybody back that can help them this year. What they're getting is going to be announced after the end of the season, and will probably go to the minors. So
yeah, it was funny though with the players to be announced later when you saw, okay, who are we getting? We're getting Bo Bichette and we're getting Vladdy Guerrero Jr.
Right.
No, that's not happening. I think we did get a pitcher and a player to be named later. I'm not sure about that, but I have heard there's a pitcher involved. But again, not someone who's ready for the majors. Will go through the Dodgers, but maybe somebody they're high on. But yeah, that's got to be tough when they say, listen, we don't have a place for you. So
we have depth. We don't need you. And we're not trade. Had he been part of a trade for Lance Lynn, let's say, that would have been at least something. Hey, we need somebody we know we can count on in here, and you've just not been consistent enough. But at least he feels like he has some value.
And will he be? Because he's always been during like Players Weekend. He was always chicken strip. Will he now be buffalo strip? I think that would work.
Hold on, I got to get the podcast commissioner on the phone and see if we can get this trade reinstated. All right, so game 3.
Game 3.
Wrapping up this set down there and the season series between these two teams.
It was a win for the Dodgers. They won 7-2. Tony Gonsolin did start. It was his shortest start of the season. He lasted 3 innings. But what stood out to me is during that third inning, the Rangers loaded the bases and they were threatening. And they kept him in, and he was able to battle back, get himself out of the jam, which is a huge confidence boost for him. Also shows him that, hey, Dave Roberts pitching and the pitching coach, they have confidence in me to keep me in with the bases loaded. He struck out Joey Gallo and Todd Frazier to end that inning. And then he went 3 innings, 1 run, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, no home runs, and he still has a .51 ERA. So Tony really has definitely earned his spot in the rotation. I'm really big on him. When he came out, joined the team last season. Just a cool guy. Doesn't look like Frank Zappa anymore, so I can't call him Tony Zappa. Well, I guess we still could, but Catmandu, whatever you want to call him. But he has earned his spot. And so I really liked that Dave Roberts gave him that opportunity to get himself out of that predicament. Because a lot of times he would have been, okay, we got to get the bullpen in here. But then the bullpen came in, and Dennis Santana, who has looked really bad, he had 2 scoreless innings.
2 perfect innings.
Yeah. So
he was the bigger cause of the loss in San Francisco, that first game in San Francisco.
Yes.
Even with what Kinley did, Santana was the loser in that one. But in this one, he redeemed himself. 2 perfect innings, a lot of run support. Mookie Corey and Gavin Lux, each with 2 hits. Cody, Corey, and Will Smith.
Yeah,
all grabbing home runs.
Yeah, and this was the 11,000th regular season victory in franchise history, dating back to the Dodgers founding in Brooklyn in 1884. And the Dodgers were 4-2 on this road trip. They're 10-2 in interleague play, and they've won 15 of the last 18 games.
Now, what did you think of Globe Life Field? What was your impression of it?
It's an awkward field. There's a lot of angles, and the outfield doesn't look settled. It reminds me a little bit, the outfield, just in certain sections, like they took part of the section from where the Brewers play in Milwaukee and said, okay, we're going to take this part and put this here. And then they said, well, we really like this part from this ballpark, and we're going to put it here. The concourse, when they were showing the concourse, that looked nice. But Joe Davis kept saying it was beautiful.
Joe, you're seeing it on TV like the rest of us. How is it that it's that beautiful? It's just, you're right. It's an awkward field.
And the seats, even though it's kind of cool, the seats, they're right on field level. The banner on top, to me, was distracting as a viewer. Now, the other thing that was really interesting about this park is the mound retracts. So do the Rangers ever lower it or raise it?
Right.
And does anybody know?
I wonder if you can see it moving.
Yeah. All of a sudden the pitcher is like, yeah, I was not impressed. And then when they showed outside, I mean, I've seen outside shots of the stadium. It just looked like a warehouse. There was, like in Anaheim, there's the big A, and, Dodger Stadium, of course, is iconic, but and Camden Yards, or, where you
look at like Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Detroit. When you look out from home plate, you see downtown of whatever city it is, or like in Pittsburgh, it's awesome because you got that, but you can also see the Clementi Bridge. There's other places. To me, normally everybody talks about Tampa Bay being the ugliest and the worst field, and it may be overall, but there's something about this field from a TV perspective. It just doesn't feel like a lot of times when you watch a game, you see like there's the backstop, there's a brick wall back there in 2 or 3 of the different places, or there's some kind of a thing where you can see the back, and it looks you just have a better feel for everything.
Right.
The way it all feels together.
I
This
thought,
one, I didn't really see that this was all that they made it out to be. And from
no.
pictures I saw before the season, from other angles, it actually didn't look bad. But once you start watching games there, they're hard to watch.
They are, and the lighting is
Yeah.
odd. It's like they're in a dim warehouse.
And there's that shade because I noticed that when the Angels were in there, they were wearing their road grays. They looked more like a blue tint to them. And that was the lighting.
Oh, well, the same thing with the Rangers. They wore red shirts there, and to me they looked orange. So
Well, they do aspire to be the team south of them.
the Asterics Juniors.
Right. Because they move the mound up and down a little bit. They've got all of the things that they put in are so that they can find better ways to cheat than banging on a trash can. All right. Before we take a look at your player of the week, who do we have coming up?
So they'll be at home. They'll have a home stand. They've got Arizona and Colorado. Arizona's last in the West. They're 14-21. Colorado's still in the mix. They're 17-17. It'll be interesting to see how Colorado comes back. They lost all 3 games against the Dodgers when they were at Chavez Ravine before. So we'll see. Will it hold up? I don't know. But yeah, Arizona, Colorado coming up. So all about the NL West for the Dodgers.
And your player of the week.
So this one was hard. I went through and I looked through his stats and I was trying to figure out, okay, who had the most home runs or who made a great defensive play. And in the end, my gut kept telling me, player of the week is Mookie Betts' teammates. And I picked them because Mookie is, the more we learn about him, he's just this stand-up guy. And he said, I don't feel comfortable playing, but that doesn't mean that you can't play. And all of the guys in the dugout and the coaching staff said, if you're not playing, we're not playing. So they are the players of the week, Mookie Betts' teammates.
Well, we talked about a lot of things that hadn't happened during the season that happened this week, like the Dodgers finally got to double-digit losses. Something happened with the Angels this week that they hadn't done all season either. And we'll get to that in just a second. The Angels were busy with the trade deadline. Not crazy busy, and they didn't give up a lot like the Mariners did. They didn't get a lot like the Padres did and the Blue Jays did. But they did make 3 big trades. And I was unhappy about all of them because the saddest thing that I ever saw was on Friday night. And you see Tommy La Stella in the dugout hugging and talking to teammates and essentially saying goodbye. Of course, nothing had been announced at that point. So we really didn't know what was going on. And it had already been a weird week because they started the week in Houston. And we'll get more into that about what happened with that in a second. But a little bit later into the game, we finally find out that La Stella had been traded up to the A's. And normally you're like, what, in the same division? Well, we never see the A's again this season. We've already finished our series. So it's not that big of a deal. And Tommy La Stella is a free agent at the end of the season. So who knows where he'll end up. He may not have stayed with us. So it wasn't a bad move. But we basically traded a solid member of the Angels to the A's for an iffy prospect. Franklin Barreto doesn't hit very well. He kind of reminds me of the infield version of Joe Adell. Except Barreto, I don't think is considered a rookie anymore. Then on Sunday, getting ready for the game, we find out that Jason Castro's a last-second scratch, and we don't see him come out into the dugout or anything. He stays back out of the way. We know he's around because a couple things happened in that game that might have brought him out. And we find out that he got traded to the Padres. But on this one, we actually got a relief pitcher, kid that can throw up in the hundreds, but has control problems, which is something to be said about guys who can throw that hard. Nolan Ryan, that was one of the things that kind of kept him from coming up right away when he first started out with the Mets, was that he had control problems because he just threw so hard. And then finally, right before the trade deadline, got word that fan favorite, especially here at my house, Brian Goodwin, Bry, had been traded to the Cincinnati Reds for a kid named Packy Naughton and a player to be named later. Packy's a pitcher, a starting pitcher, and not real sure, looking at his numbers, what he's going to be, how he's going to be. So we're going to have to look and see with that. I don't think we'll see him this season. The hope is that the player to be named later will be a pitcher as well, because we don't really need another middle infielder. Don't really need an outfielder. I mean, it's okay, but we have David Fletcher still who can play anywhere. Anyway, so they go to Houston, play the Asterics. Before everything started, it was supposed to be a 4-game set Monday through Thursday. And then Hurricane Laura track was taken into account. They looked at everything and they said, hey, let's do this instead. Monday we'll play regular game. Tuesday we'll play a doubleheader, and Wednesday we'll play early. It was like a noon start. You'll be out of here Wednesday night. Storm doesn't come in until much later, Wednesday or early Thursday. Then it looked like with an update, it was going to get there earlier. So the Angels played 3 games there with the doubleheader on Tuesday, but they left Tuesday night to get home. So they ended up having Wednesday, Thursday off before the Mariners came in. First game out, it was standard. If you've been watching the Angels, which I know you haven't, but I have. 11-4 loss. Of course, Houston looked pretty good with the exception of Altuve because he just looks bad. Fletcher, 3 for 5. Rendon, 2 for 4. Upton comes in 1 for 4, and that one was a home run. So that was pretty good. Patrick Sandoval, who's had moments, still can't seem to put it together. And the more he pitches, the worse it seems to get. Only 2 2/3 innings, gave up 5 earned runs. The rest of the runs, the other 6, were scattered amongst the bullpen, which really had been our strong point and still is. I mean, no one reliever was that bad. It was just a bad game all around.
Well, in this game, Albert Pujols did pass A-Rod, your arch nemesis, on the all-time RBI list with
yes, he did.
2,087. Of course, I'm sure he might have some more, but he is.
He already has some more.
So he's put himself.
He's distancing himself from A-Fraud.
That's right. So,
and then
cool.
One other thing that happened in that game, 2 other things actually. Noe Ramirez, the answer is never Noe Ramirez, whatever the question is, was the only actual relief pitcher to not give up any runs in 1 1/3 inning. The other player to pitch was catcher Anthony Bimboom, doffed the gear and went out to pitch 1 scoreless inning to finish up the game.
Well, maybe his mentor is Russell Martin, who
I was checking to see if maybe Russell Martin was a special coach.
He was great in the Dodger bullpen.
He was. So we go to game 2, and remember we were talking about the trades? Game 2, still lost 6-3. We got 4 hit, one by Albert Pujols, and the others were Tommy La Stella, Jason Castro, and Brian Goodwin.
Of course.
And La Stella his 1 hit was a home run. And on that game, remember, this one was a 7-inning game because it was the first game of a doubleheader. Jose Suarez, who I think we talked about last week, they brought him up last year too early, but we didn't have anybody else, with all the injuries and issues that we had with the pitching last year. He didn't look good the last game he pitched versus San Francisco. He looked worse this time. He only made it through an inning. He did face a couple batters in the second inning, but no outs. Struck out 2, walked 4, gave up 5 earned runs. Currently, he has a 38.57 ERA, a 6.5 whip.
Yikes.
And that's over 2.1 innings.
Holy cow. That's crazy.
He is just not, and sometimes you can go, oh, he pitched okay, but he just didn't get any support. He's pitching terribly, and it doesn't matter. Now, on the other hand, another kid that came up last season who pitched better, he came in and finished up the game, the last 6 innings. Jaime Barria only gave up 1 earned run and was the opposite. He struck out 4 and only walked. So he had a better game, but the offense it wasn't there. It wasn't like we've seen. It is like we've seen. They just no support.
Yeah.
But then we get to game 3. And this is when we start talking about things that have never happened for the Angels this season. And it's not the number of runs they scored, because they scored 12 and they beat the Asterics 12-5. And who had a big game? Oh yeah, Brian Goodwin, 3 RBIs, 1 for 2, a sacrifice fly, 2 walks. Fletcher, 3 for 5. Luis Rengifo with a home run. Shohei, 2 for 4. Julio Teheran, 4 scoreless innings. And it wasn't until he got to that 2/3 of an inning that he started having issues, gave up 3 earned runs, and one of those being a home run, struck out 3. So a better outing overall, still uneven though. It was a good attack across the board for the Angels in that game. One thing you should notice in all of the ones that I talked about, not once did I talk about Mike Trout.
Nope.
Houston used 8 pitchers in that 7-inning game. And it was one of those games where you get to that point where no matter what you do, it seems like every ball makes it through a hole. If you dive for it, it bounces over your glove. It's just one of those games. So I was like, cool, we got one of them. And I didn't think anything else. They get 2 days off, which were planned. They didn't end up taking a day off with the other teams. Went home, hung out, had a mini all-star break, as Joe Madden said, and welcomed the Mariners in for game 1, which is when Tommy La Stella left. And Andrew Haney said, I pitched so badly and didn't do my part that one of my teammates had to leave because of it.
So I have a question, because Andrew Haney went 7 2/3 innings. He had 10 strikeouts. But for him to pitch well, do the Angels have to get rid of somebody right before he pitches for him to?
I'm wondering if that's it, because he did pitch probably the best game of the season.
Yeah.
His problem will be, and I hope to see more outings like that, but he's been inconsistent his whole career. And he's another Tommy John guy. I don't see this as being the breakthrough, because he's had breakthrough games before, or what we thought were breakthrough games. And then he drops off again. He can be consistent, but if you just want an innings eater, he's not even really that. He's not a guy who can get it. That's why we got Julio Teheran, was hoping he could go out and give you 6, limit any damage. And we have enough offensive possibilities that we should be able to score more runs. The problem is like I said, we score 10, pitchers give up 12.
Yeah, it doesn't work well. Now, Justin Upton had a good game. He had a 3-hit game. Trout hit a home run, and Pujols tied George Brett for 6th on the all-time list with 665 doubles. Has since surpassed that.
He's
another milestone
right now. So we get another win, 3-2. So we're on a 2-game streak. Now we equal our best for the season, which brings us to game 2 of this 4-game set, where strange things were afoot, because something else that hadn't happened this season happened. Oh, before I get there, game 1, Joe Adell made a great play, a great throw from right field, hits Simba, who was the cutoff man, and relays it in to get the man at the plate, which kept it from being tied. And we ended up winning that game. Otherwise, we would have probably gone to innings, sadly. So Mike Trout in the second game of the series goes 3 for 4, 6 RBIs, hits a home run, a double. Anthony Bim Boom, 2 for 4. Andrelton Simmons, 2 for 3. But the big thing was Joe Adell, who after 18 games in the majors finally hit his first home run.
And not only did he hit his first home run, he hit his second home run.
That's right. He hit 2 in this game. The first one was announcing his presence with authority. The second one went off the wall above the yellow line. So
that's still a home run. But he does become the 5th Angels player to hit their first 2 career homers in the same game. And he is the 3rd youngest to have a multi-homer game behind Mike Trout and Tom Bernanski. And the Angels scored their most runs since posting 21 in a July 2nd, 2016 game.
Yeah, that was versus the Red Sox.
I
remember that game. And then Dylan Bundy had another decent outing, 5.1 innings pitched, 1 earned run given up. And then he was awash with walks and strikeouts, 3 of each. He got the win, and they looked really good. And then we say goodbye to the winning streak. So we got 3. That was decent, and we scored a lot of runs. But the next 2 games, we could only score 1 run each. And in both those games, we lost 2-1. Now, here's the sad part. On the Sunday game, Griffin Canning comes out, throws 8 innings, gives up 4 hits, 1 earned run, strikes out 7. Very economical outing, only throws 94 pitches, and doesn't even qualify for the win. He got a no decision. You take him out, rookie Jose Quijada comes in and gives up the other run. Kyle Lewis for the Mariners grabbed a home run. We've been talking a lot about Kyle throughout, and that he's probably going to be the AL Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
Albert, 2 for 4. That's where he went ahead of George Brett. He has the magical 666 when it comes to doubles. Now, only he could get 1 more home run and have the magical 660.
Yes, that'd
So
be awesome.
moving towards passing A-Fraud.
And we want to wish David Fletcher, we want his ankle to get better because he is currently day-to-day. I don't know that he sprained his ankle, but he rolled it. And yeah, so we need him back.
Hustling off, to first, hit the bag, came off of it. Unlike what Andrelton Simmons has done, where Andrelton Simmons has done it on the bag. He hit the bag, came off of it, and you could see in his next step off, you could see his ankle roll. He did come out and play another inning in the field, and then that was it. They brought in Rengifo to finish things up for him. So, yeah, we definitely want to get him back, but we want him to take the rest. Nothing big's happening. Come back when you're fully healthy.
And the Angels bullpen, I think, should be aware that when they come in, and I say this all the time, they saved the game. The Angels are 1-5 in innings. So that should be in the bullpen. Says when we go into innings, it's not so good. So let's not go into innings.
Right. Let's keep this from happening.
Right.
Well, in that game, it's like, hey, at least we haven't lost yet. And I think that's the key. But yeah, you're right. I don't look forward to innings for numerous reasons. One being the dumb new rule. They wrapped up the series with another loss, 2-1. Andrelton Simmons did go 2 for 4. Justin Upton, J-Up was 1 for 3 with a home run. I'm tentatively saying he's breaking out of the slump. Seems to be doing better. Let's see what happens with that. And then Jaime Barria, not a great start, but not bad. 4 1/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, gave up 1 earned run, struck out 3, walked 2. It was Matt Andriese who gave up a home run to Marmolejos. That was the winning run. And the Angels split the series 2-2. They tied the Mariners on the season series, so they haven't won any season series yet. But hopefully, there's something. I mean, like anything, we can all say they could go on a run, but I'm just not sure about that. And it's okay if they don't. Just play hard, play good. Let's get these guys who need some time, their time, and get a development and put ourselves in a position to be ready to play hard next season.
So who do the Angels have coming up?
They have the Padres coming in on Wednesday. Might see Mike Clevenger. They do face one of the better Padres pitchers in Lamet to start off the set. And then potentially Clevenger in the Thursday game. And then they have the Asterics coming in over the weekend. Saturday will be a doubleheader to make up for the game that they didn't get in Houston. Thanks to Laura. Just blame it all on her. So I looked at everything. I went through who should be the player of the week. I almost gave it to Joe Adell just simply because of that play that he made that actually made him look like he knew what he was doing, and the 2 home runs. But really, when I looked at everything, he looked just as bad outside of those 3 plays. Overall, he may have had an extra base hit somewhere along the way, but a lot of strikeouts, and that he's not ready for this honor. So I give it to J-Up. Justin Upton, 4 games played, went 4 for 13, batting .308 in the week, .438 on base percentage, 3 home runs, 4 RBIs. So a good week for J-Up. He definitely contributed.
So I do have an Angels player of the week, even though I don't often watch the Angels because I do believe in superstition in baseball. But my player of the week for the Angels is going to be Griffin Canning. Yes, it was a loss, but he looked good in that game. He gave up 1 run on 4 hits over a career high 8 innings. So something really good for him, especially to use going forward. So for me, Griffin Canning is the Angels player of the week.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Griffin Canning definitely is on his way to being a definite bright spot. Unlike Andrew Haney, who's proven where he is and what he can do, we haven't fully seen all that Griffin Canning can do. He's had some real good spots, and I see a bright future for him if we could just get some other top-notch pitching around him. Farewell to Tommy, Jason, and Bry. You will be missed. All right, in hurricane fashion, let's look around the league, and we'll start off in the East. Home of the Tampa Bay Rays, the AL East leading Tampa Bay Rays.
They are
like
on fire.
24-11 or something like that. They've won 5 as of Sunday in a row. Who knows what the week's coming up? And they're playing the quickly fading
Yankees.
Yep.
I felt like on the, what is it, Kevin Millar, got him. I said Yankees, but maybe the Tampa Bay Rays, they got the Yankees. But yeah, they've got a series coming up, and they have, like, their pitching staff is on the IL. They're still winning. They're still cranking it out.
The pitchers that are there, Blake Snell, his ERA is only like 3.14, which isn't bad, but he's their Cy Young guy.
Yeah.
Well, who's the Glass now? I think is one of the other pitchers who's up and down. He's not been that good, but they're good enough that they're getting things done. And obviously at 24-11, 23-11, they're playing strong. We'll see how they play against the Yankees, but the Yankees are missing Judge. Stanton.
Yeah, but Judge was on the IL. Then he was off the IL. Then he's back on the IL. It's so confusing.
I didn't realize until I saw that. I thought he had just stayed on the IL. I didn't realize he had come off and then went back on.
Right. That's what I thought too.
That's
Very
like when you're
confusing.
driving, you get off the freeway, you realize it's the wrong exit, and you just keep straight on back onto the on-ramp. The IL on-ramp.
Yes. But DJ LeMahieu is off the IL. He is back in the lineup, and he's huge for the Yankees. He makes the most impact for that team, I think.
I think the one thing that was lucky for them this weekend is they played the hapless Mets. So that helped them because they're a 2-game winning streak. This week, they're going to have to watch because this is the other thing about the Rays. Nobody on the team is hitting over 300. Yandy Diaz, who's overall been their best hitter, batting .297. Brandon Lau, 10 home runs. We talked about Blake Snell and what he's doing. But they're getting things from a lot of places. That's what you need. You need a whole team of around average guys so that not just one guy's constantly carrying the load. Speaking of the Mets, they took on the Marlins last week for the COVID-19 trophy, and the Marlins took it.
Which it should be the Marlins. They really should have just been given the trophy. They didn't need to play a game.
Well, they're the COVID pioneers.
That could be their new name.
Yeah, that's what they should have, that the COVID, but it can't just be pioneers. It has to be COVID pioneers.
Right. Yeah, it can't just be the pioneers. The COVID.
We could, you know what you could do? You know how like in Spanglish, you'll add something that sounds Spanish to the end of a word. They could be the COVID arrows. the COVID achis.
That works.
I don't know. It could be one of those things, especially being down in Miami. They could really make that work, I think. So the East is a mess like all the others. The Braves, we talked about earlier, didn't make any trades for pitching, but they needed. And they're playing close to 500 ball, maybe 3 or 4 games over. So we don't know who's going to come out of what. We don't know what impact the Mets will have with the trades they made. The
The
Marlins and Marte, will that be a big difference?
And the
Obviously,
Phillies?
pitching, I think. The Phillies, who added a lot of pitchers to their staff and had been playing well overall. Harper having the best year of his career, it feels like. John Segura, another one for that team. I think it made it hard for a lot of teams to decide whether to sell or to buy at the trade deadline based on the fact that they're not really out of it. There's only a couple of teams that probably, when you look at it, are out of it. And unfortunately, that would be Pittsburgh, the Angels, probably the Mariners, and the Boston Red Sox. And they gave up a lot of players, more than, I think Kevin Pillar was probably the biggest one that they gave up, but they did a lot more very quietly under the radar with giving up a lot of pitchers. Let's head to the Central, to the south side of Chicago, the baddest part of town. And if you go down there, you better beware of a man named Lucas Giolito. He had another first of the season.
First no-hitter with 101 pitches, 13 strikeouts against the Pirates.
So does that really count then?
Can it be half a no-hitter?
Well, I think a no-hitter is a tough thing anyway, because even a team like the Pirates could get lucky and get a hit. They're not a team that doesn't get hits. Or they get no hit all the time. So think about it this way. Their batting average is better than the Rangers' batting average.
Yeah.
So only by 4 percentage points, but still.
And Lucas Giolito's 13 strikeouts were the most by a Chicago White Sox pitcher in a no-hitter. He is the AL Player of the Week, which makes sense. And he has a fun last name to say, Giolito.
This is one thing that I was surprised by. They didn't hit a single home run in that game. And that's what, the Southside Bombers have become known for. I mean, they lead the American League in home runs with 65 as of Sunday. I mean, this is a team with a 270 overall batting average, the White Sox. So and that leads the American League as well. So that was kind of crazy that there were no home runs, but he didn't need them. They got him what he needed, and he shut down the Pirates. And that puts them in a tie with the Indians for first place, which triggers another first for this season. Minnesota. I think they've been in first place the whole season.
I think so. Nope, no longer, because they were swept by the Tigers and lost 3 games. And for the Tigers, Miguel Cabrera hit his 2,000th hit as a Tiger. And the best part of that, he took a curtain call to the cutouts.
That's it. Whoever was looking in the buildings from downtown.
He was waving. Yes.
Did you see the tragedy in Boston? Just to go back to the East real quick.
I did. And I think it's a first. I hope it never happens again.
Fan falling from the Green Monster. There used to not be seats up there. And now with the seats up there, it was inevitable.
It really was. And luckily it was a cutout. I hope this does not happen. For real. I don't think that I would ever want to sit there, just because I'm not a fan of heights, and I like to get up and clap and cheer, and I would feel like I was going to fall off. So,
well, we'd have to put you in one of the middle rows, and then maybe put a strap on you so that you were strapped out. Even if you're standing, you can't go too far any one way.
You're right.
I would think that it would be an interesting place. I never thought that they could do that, or that they would do that, but it would be an interesting place to watch a game.
It would be.
So right now, the Indians and the White Sox tied for first as of Sunday with 21-13 identical records. As we were just talking about, the White Sox are at the top of most offensive categories, with the exception of strikeouts. They rank towards the bottom of the AL in strikeouts at 12th with only 329. Pitching wise, they're kind of towards the top to the middle in some, but overall solid. Obviously, Giolito, Dallas Keuchel have both been really good for them. The other pitchers that they have been stepping up. They don't look bad. FIP of 3.96, which is definitely a reasonable when the team ERA is 3.73. When you look at the Indians, though, the Indians are kind of the opposite. They rank more towards the bottom in offense. So all the trades that they made, they didn't really get anything that's going to help them now.
Yeah, and the only person that you would think that's probably going to get playing time that sticks out in my mind is Austin Hedges, but good defensively, not good offensively. The only team that he really seemed to hit off of was the Dodgers. So, yeah, but now he doesn't play, he won't play the Dodgers. So what will happen? Right. But doesn't Cleveland, don't they have some guy named Bieber?
I thought Justin Bieber was like some kind of a singer.
Oh, no, I was thinking of the other guy. He's a pitcher. Shane?
Oh, right.
Yeah, we forget about him because he flies under the radar.
Shane Bieber.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why he's part of the reason why the Indians are number one in a lot of the categories. Team ERA, 2.87. They've only given up 2.87. They've only given up 241 hits. They've only given up 104 runs. The White Sox have given up 139. And I didn't even bother to look at who was at the bottom of that list, who's given up the most runs, probably like the Angels or the Mariners or the Red Sox. Their FIP is 3.34. So that's a pretty good indicator of what they're doing, that they're not giving up a lot of home runs. They're causing a lot of strikeouts, not a lot of walks. They've only given up 91 walks on the season to like the White Sox have given up 117.
Well, it's interesting too, because they traded Mike Clevenger and they still look good with their starting rotation, because you have to think that Zach Plesac will be back.
I believe I saw that he's going to come back this coming week and pitch. But you also got to remember that neither of those guys have pitched in a while.
True, that's right.
They had a couple of weeks off, and Plesac's finally going to be coming back. Obviously, Clevenger, as we talked about earlier, is probably going to start in San Diego this week, so it seems. But they haven't pitched.
So it really hasn't made a difference.
No, that's another one of those things. Like we talked about Ross Stripling. If I'm, Clevenger is making it out to be like, well, this is right where I wanted to be. And the Padres really seem like his kind of a team based on what has come out about him recently. That the only guy, and what's sad about that is really when you look at the Padres, it's only Machado that gives them a bad name. Tatis is constantly playing hard.
Mm-hmm.
Hosmer does his job, doesn't say anything. Cronenworth has been quiet and is quietly a rookie of the year. Grisham is another one.
Yeah.
Trent Grisham. So there's a lot going on there that you would say, wow, because the Padres, slammed Diego and all that. But when you look at them, they're not really one of those teams that's high with a lot of attitude and personality that's coming out like crazy across the board. They're just playing good. They're enjoying playing. They're doing well. The Pirates, as we talked about, finally broke into double digits in wins, got their 10th win.
And that's pretty much it. They got their 10th win, and
that's it.
Hopefully they'll get 11, but who knows when.
Maybe not. They did split the season series with the Brewers, which is good. And right now they lead the season series with the Cardinals 3-2. Obviously, they still have 5 more games to figure out and make up and all that, because some of their games were postponed due to the Cardinals' COVID mess up. Of course, they are only batting .217 as a team, which, why do you think they're playing so poorly? The only team that's worse than them batting average-wise as a team, Texas Rangers.
Yeah, as I say, it has to be in the West.
And like I said, Texas Rangers, only 27 home runs. Even the Indians, who have almost no offense at all, which you would think they'd have a little bit more than they do. They do have it from their infielders. Jose Ramirez has been great. Lindor's starting to pick it up, but their outfield is just anemic. Before we get to the last thing that was a first this week.
So you want to talk about outfielders that are not anemic, at least in this one game. Are all three starting outfielders for the Cubs hit home runs? Jason Hayward, Ian Happ, and Kyle Schwarber all hit 2 home runs. They became the first starting outfielders in Major League Baseball history to hit at least 2 home runs each in a game. So very cool.
Wow, that's pretty
for
cool.
the
And
Cubbies.
that's what keeps them at the top, and the rest of the Central fighting amongst themselves as to who's going to go where. So,
Or the Cubs fighting with the Reds.
yeah, but I mean, like in standings.
Right,
The
I know
loss
what
is
you
not
mean.
physically.
Well, I don't know if they even knew what was going on.
No, they didn't. And there was both managers in that little fray between the Cubs and the Reds thrown out. David Ross and David Bell, both thrown out. Both got, I don't know if both of them got suspensions, but they both got fined.
Yep, Joey Votto.
Joe Votto got a fine. There was another player that got a 1-game suspension. Crazy. And they came together. They were ready to brawl. It wasn't as bad as the A's and Asterics because they mostly just stood around. But there was a lot of John. And it's one thing I've seen this season, a lot of people being thrown out because the umpires hear everything, but they don't always know who said it.
Right.
It's not like last year when they would throw Brett Gardner out of the Yankees out every game because he was in there banging on the ceiling of the dugout with his bat. They knew who was doing that. Here, Steven Strasburg from the Nationals got tossed out. He was in street clothes. Wasn't even pitching. He couldn't just be a fan. No, they tossed him out of the stadium.
Nope,
"You're
he's
gone."
gone. Yeah.
And he's not been the only guy. The Pirates had a player earlier on that we talked about, and they weren't sure if they were who they were throwing out. Were they throwing out the manager? They're throwing out here, and I think the managers come out to argue who's being thrown out, and then in the process get thrown out themselves.
Right. They're like, who? You talking to me? Who?
Yeah.
Who are you talking to?
Me? And the other thing that I've noticed has been a big thing this year: hit by pitches. Sometimes
been several.
multiple in games.
Yeah.
I'm more amazed when I don't see one in a game.
Yeah, and the strike zones have been really interesting. Very compact, some very big, and they've just been all over the place. So
there was one last couple of weeks where the pitch was right down the middle of the plate. It was a textbook strike, and they called it a ball.
Yeah. Now I wonder, because there was a guy who it was like his major league debut, and because there are a lot of umpires are in the minor leagues that are umping because of opt-outs, and I wonder, does he call in the league, like the Arizona League or where the Atlantic League, where they have the robot? Maybe that's the problem. And
he was waiting for something in his ear.
Right. And he's like, I didn't hear it, so
no, ball.
Yeah.
If I didn't hear it, it's a ball.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, so let's take a look, a real quick journey through the West. Over the week, the Padres and the Rockies played, and the Rockies just didn't look good. They did 4-game set. Padres beat them 3 of the 4. The only game that the Padres lost was actually close. It was a 4-3 loss. The rest of the games were blowouts: 10-4, 13-2, 6-0.
And I want to say, I'll give him his due. Lazy Manny, Player of the Week for the NL.
Yes, he was.
But he hasn't been named Player of the Week since April of 2018, which solidifies my nickname of Lazy Manny.
You mean except for last week?
Sure.
When he got it then too. So 2 weeks in a row, he's been the Player of the Week.
Well, I glossed over that. But he hit .538 with 1,000 slugging percentage, 3 home runs, which all came in the same day. It was a double header that they played. So 2 in one game, 1 in the other. He does garner NL Player of the Week. I will begrudgingly say good for you.
You gave him that one.
That's it.
Now, the Padres did play Seattle and dropped 2 of 3 to the Mariners. So that's partially why they're not up there competing with the Dodgers record-wise.
I think watching the Mariners play against the Dodgers, that they are really one of those teams that could play the upset for teams that are coming in that are like the Padres. They've got a good team, a lot of young players, but they're putting it together. So I was impressed with the Mariners. I don't get to see them play as often. I guess if I watch the Angels more, if I got over my superstition of every time I watch the Angels, they lose. But maybe because they lose a lot anyway, I can watch it without feeling bad.
Now, talking about the Padres, we didn't think about this, but Clevenger could end up being a bad addition.
Could be.
Based on the fact of his actions in Cleveland.
He could bring the COVID.
Yeah, he could. Maybe he's got a bag full of it, hands it out to each player. You know how some players will give everybody a gift?
Yeah.
He's bringing COVID.
He's bringing COVID. Now, I want to mention, I was looking at the Dodgers starting rotation and the Padres starting rotation, and yes, I am a Dodger fan. I will always be a Dodger fan. But even with the addition of Clevenger, the Dodgers still have a better rotation. And
I'm thinking that the Padres are probably going to take themselves out because Clevenger is going to give everybody COVID, and then they're not going to be able to play. And the Dodgers won't be forced to do it for them.
Right.
Put them out of their misery.
He'll be like Oprah, and you get COVID, and you get COVID. Look under your seat. There's COVID.
There's COVID. It's everywhere. All right. And then the D-backs, they played San Francisco. Of course, the D-backs gave up a lot of their players and none to the Padres, surprisingly. But they gave up quite a few players. They take on the Giants and only win 1 of the 3 from them. So the Giants have actually put themselves in a position with a couple of nice little streaks. They could be a playoff team.
They could be. And I think they're working on that.
And then the Rockies' reversal of fortune when they played the Diamondbacks, they swept them, taking all 3 games of that series.
Yes, because according to the announcers for the Rockies play great in the desert. And so they proved that by sweeping the Diamondbacks. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see too with the Giants, because you heard Cueto, Gossman, those were the 2 big ones that you thought maybe could be traded. I'm trying to think, there was another guy, but those were 2 of the big ones that I saw, and they didn't do anything either, even though they are in position to possibly pick up a playoff spot. So I think that's interesting.
That
they
was
just
one of
went
those good moves, because I thought Gossman was for sure gonna go. I didn't think Cueto would move, but I thought Gossman was probably on his way out. And I think I even mentioned that he'd be a good fit in with the Nationals, perhaps. Now, one more thing that hadn't happened all season happened this week. And we'll wrap up with this. COVID finally struck the West. It came to the AL West. A member of the A's traveling party tested positive, which ended up postponing the final game of their 3-game set with the Asterics. And it has come out since that their series with the Mariners has been postponed in full and will be made up, in doubleheaders later on, which I think actually works out better for the players because it's only 7 innings. And if you've watched one of these 7-inning games, it happens quick.
It's fast. Yeah.
In fact, I'm starting to believe that the first 7 innings are the fastest part of the game. It's the 8th and the 9th that are slowing everything down. Oh yeah, we played the first 7 innings in 2 hours. It took us 2 hours and 20 minutes to play the 8th and the 9th.
I think you have something there. Yeah, out of an abundance of caution, they are postponing those games. But on the positive side, or should I say on the negative side, no players have tested positive.
Yeah, not at this point. And it probably, if none have now, chances are they aren't. But the West was the only division of all of baseball to not be affected by it. So those 10 teams hadn't had it. And then it was the AL West. And of all the teams in the AL West, the A's seem like the team that would happen to. It's just something about, maybe it's about the stadium they play in. Maybe there's just something, but they just seem like they're the team that would end up having that happen.
Right. We all want it to be the Asterics, but we
I'm
really know
blaming
it's
the
the
Asterics
A's. Okay.
I think it was a member of their traveling party, but they came in contact with Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman because he's on the IL, and those guys both have it, and they gave it to the guy at the traveling party, thinking we can't bang on drums, we can't wear buzzers. He'll take it back into the clubhouse, get everybody sick. That's what I'm going with right there.
The evil
The Asterics
geniuses
are COVID carriers.
They are. That's what I totally think that is the correct story, and that's what MLB should be putting out there. But we know that's not going to happen because they all have immunity.
Well, not from COVID, apparently. It doesn't matter, because even if it came out that was the case, it would just get Manfreded anyway.